The gathering storm Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Through the massive viewing screen, he watched thousands of warships gather in the darkness of space. Each ship was enormous, bigger than entire cities back on the conquered worlds. The smallest destroyer was 3 kilometers long. The largest dreadnought stretched for 20 kilometers and carried enough firepower to crack planets. This was the greatest fleet the Zephyrian Empire had ever assembled. 10,000 ships from a dozen different conquered species. The Altarians contributed their plasma cannons. The Vagan Confederacy provided their shield generators. The Centauri Republic added their quantum torpedoes, all under Zephyrian command, all serving the Empire. Kethvar had been fighting wars for the Empire for over 200 years. His purple skin was marked with scars from countless battles. His forearms moved with practiced precision as he reviewed the tactical displays. 3 red eyes studied every detail of the coming invasion. He had conquered 47 star systems. He had never lost a battle. "Admiral," said Commander Vexthul, approaching with a datapad. "The final intelligence reports on the target world." Kethvar took the pad with one of his lower arms while his upper arms remained clasped behind his back. The information was almost laughable. The 3rd planet of a small yellow star. The natives called it Earth. They were a young species that had barely left their homeworld. According to the scouts, humans had only achieved spaceflight a few hundred years ago. Their rockets still used chemical fuel. They had built a few small space stations around their planet. Their largest warship was maybe 300 meters long. It was primitive beyond belief. "They have nuclear weapons," Vexthul noted, "but only small ones. Nothing that could threaten our shields." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Nuclear weapons were what children played with. The Empire had moved beyond such crude tools centuries ago. A single Imperial destroyer could turn a continent into glass with its particle beams. "How many ships do they have?" Kethvar asked. "Maybe 500 total. Most are cargo vessels or small patrol craft. Perhaps 50 could be considered military vessels, but they are armed with primitive chemical explosives and basic energy weapons." Kethvar set down the datapad. This was not even worth calling a conquest. It was more like collecting fruit from a tree. The humans would see the Imperial fleet and surrender immediately. Any species with intelligence would realize the hopelessness of their situation. "Signal the fleet," Kethvar ordered. "We advance to the target system in 6 hours. All ships are to prepare for standard occupation protocols." The bridge crew worked efficiently to relay his orders. Across the massive fleet, 10,000 ships began their final preparations. Weapon systems were charged. Landing craft were loaded with occupation forces. Planetary bombardment coordinates were calculated. Kethvar walked to the tactical display table at the center of the bridge. The holographic image showed the Sol system in perfect detail. The star was unremarkable. 8 planets, several moons, an asteroid belt. The 3rd planet was covered mostly in water with large land masses. About 8 billion humans lived on its surface. "The planet has good agricultural potential," Vexthul observed. "The natives can be relocated to the polar regions. The fertile zones will make excellent farming colonies for the Empire." This was standard procedure. Useful species were kept alive as workers. Their military was destroyed, their governments eliminated, their leaders executed. The survivors learned to serve the Empire or they died. It was simple and efficient. "What about their technology?" Kethvar asked. "Anything worth studying?" "Nothing significant. Their computers are primitive. Their materials science is basic. They do have some interesting biological research, but nothing the Empire doesn't already possess." Kethvar nodded. Some species had technologies worth taking before their conquest. The Vagan Confederacy had developed excellent shield generators. The Altarians had perfected plasma weapons, but humans seemed to have nothing to offer except their bodies for labor. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a message from High Command." The main screen shifted to show Supreme Admiral Jektar, commander of all Imperial forces. His ancient face was scarred from 1,000 battles. His cybernetic eye glowed red as he spoke. "Admiral Kethvar, the Emperor himself is watching this conquest. Make it swift and total. Show the galaxy that no world is beyond the reach of the Empire." "It will be done, Supreme Admiral. The humans will surrender within hours of our arrival." "Good. Do not underestimate any species, but this appears to be a simple matter. End this quickly and return to the core worlds. We have reports of rebellion in the Outer Rim that require attention." The transmission ended. Kethavar felt the weight of Imperial expectations. This conquest needed to be perfect, fast, clean, with minimal losses. It would demonstrate Imperial power to any species thinking of resistance. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, announced the navigation officer. Excellent. Kethavar returned to his command chair. Signal the fleet. We depart in 1 hour. He used the time to review the invasion plans one final time. The fleet would emerge at the edge of the Sol system. They would advance slowly, giving the humans time to detect them and understand their hopeless situation. A surrender demand would be broadcast. When the humans inevitably refused, a demonstration of Imperial power would follow. Perhaps they would destroy one of the human space stations, maybe vaporize their moon, something to show the consequences of resistance. After the humans surrendered, occupation forces would land at major population centers. Human governments would be dissolved. Their military would be disarmed and executed. The population would be evaluated for usefulness. Workers would be relocated to designated zones. The elderly and sick would be eliminated as inefficient. Within 1 year, Earth would be a productive Imperial world. Within 10 years, the humans would be grateful subjects of the Empire. Their children would grow up knowing no other way of life. It was the same pattern that had been repeated on dozens of worlds. Sir, all ships are ready. Begin hyperspace jump. Destination, Sol system. The bridge lights dimmed as the massive engines engaged. Through the viewing screen, the stars began to stretch and blur. 10,000 ships entered hyperspace together, reality bending around them as they crossed the impossible distances between stars. Kethavar felt satisfied. This would be recorded as the fastest conquest in Imperial history. The human world would fall before they even knew they were under attack. Another star system would join the Empire. Another species would learn to serve. He had no idea that Earth had been watching his fleet since the moment it left Zephyrian space. He had no knowledge that human technology was centuries beyond anything the Empire possessed. He could not imagine that his massive, invincible armada was already targeted by weapons that could unmake matter itself. In 6 hours, Admiral Kethavar would learn what it meant to underestimate humanity. But he would only have seconds to understand his mistake, before he and his entire fleet ceased to exist. The greatest military force in galactic history was about to discover that Earth was not the primitive world it appeared to be, and the universe was about to learn why humans had remained hidden for so long. First Contact Protocol. The Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a storm made of metal and fire. 10,000 warships materialized from nothing, their massive hulls blocking out stars. The smallest destroyers were mountains floating in space. The largest dreadnoughts were like moving cities, bristling with weapons that could destroy worlds. Admiral Kethavar watched the tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet had emerged exactly where planned, just beyond the orbit of the outermost planet. The humans would detect them soon if they had not already. Their primitive sensors would show an invasion force beyond their worst nightmares. All ships report successful jump completion, announced Commander Vexthul. No technical difficulties. Fleet is ready for advance. Excellent. Begin standard deep scan of the system. I want to know everything about human military capabilities. The sensor operators worked at their stations. Banks of equipment designed to penetrate any stealth technology swept across the Sol system. Within minutes, detailed information flowed across the bridge displays. Sir, scanning complete. We detect 5 space stations around the third planet. All are small, probably civilian. We count 437 space vehicles total. Most appear to be cargo vessels or small shuttles. Perhaps 60 could be military vessels. Kethavar studied the scans. The human space infrastructure was even more primitive than intelligence reports suggested. Their largest space station was maybe 2 kilometers across. Their biggest warship was barely 300 meters long. The entire human space force could fit inside one of his dreadnoughts. Any sign of hidden military installations? Asteroid bases? Ships hiding behind planets? Negative, sir. Their stealth technology appears non-existent. What we see is what they have. Perfect. This would be even easier than expected. Kethavar had conquered species with 10 times the space capability of these humans. Some had put up fights lasting months. The humans would probably surrender the moment they saw his fleet. Open a channel to the human homeworld. Broadcast on all frequencies they use. The communications officer worked for several minutes to establish contact. Human communication technology was simple but functional. They used basic radio waves and primitive data transmission. like children playing with toys. Channel open, sir. Kethvar stood and activated the recording system. This message would be broadcast to every human communication device on their planet and in space. Billions would hear the words that ended their independence forever. Attention, primitive inhabitants of the third planet. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. Your world is now claimed by the Empire. You will surrender immediately and unconditionally. Resistance is impossible. You have one rotation of your planet to comply. Failure to surrender will result in the total destruction of your civilization. The message was broadcast in dozens of human languages. Imperial translation systems had decoded their communications within hours of arriving in the system. It was a simple matter to ensure every human understood their situation. Now came the waiting. Most species responded quickly to surrender demands. They performed quick calculations of Imperial strength versus their own capabilities and made the logical choice. Some tried to negotiate, which was pointless. A few attempted desperate last-minute military preparations, which was amusing. Sir, we're receiving a response from the planet's surface. That was faster than expected. Perhaps humans were more intelligent than their technology suggested. Fear could motivate quick decisions. Put it on the main screen. The display showed a middle-aged human male wearing simple clothing. He sat at a basic table in what appeared to be a government building. Behind him hung a flag with symbols Kethvar did not recognize. The human spoke in one of their primary languages with translation appearing as text. Greetings to the visiting vessels. I am Secretary General Chen of the United Nations of Earth. We received your message but would like to clarify your intentions. Are you seeking diplomatic contact with our world? We are prepared to discuss peaceful relations and cultural exchange. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting between our representatives to establish better understanding. Kethvar blinked all three eyes in surprise. The human was responding as if this was a normal diplomatic contact. Did they not understand what they were facing? Could they not count the ships in his fleet? Sir, said Vexthul quietly, perhaps their sensors are too primitive to detect our full strength. That made sense. Human technology was crude enough that they might only detect a fraction of the Imperial fleet. They probably thought this was a small exploration force rather than the largest military armada in galactic history. Open channel again, Kethvar ordered. I will make our situation clearer. The communication system activated. This time Kethvar would ensure the humans understood exactly what they faced. Human Secretary General Chen. This is not a diplomatic mission. This is a military conquest. My fleet contains 10,000 warships. Each ship can destroy your largest cities. Your entire military could not damage even one of our vessels. You have no choice but surrender. Comply immediately or watch your world burn. The transmission ended. Surely now the humans would understand. When primitive species faced overwhelming force, survival instinct took control. They would surrender within hours. Sir, should we begin advancing toward the planet? Not yet. Give them time to comprehend their situation. Fear makes compliance more complete. Hours passed. The Imperial fleet waited at the system's edge while the humans presumably debated their response. Kethvar used the time to review occupation procedures. Landing sites were selected for maximum strategic value. Population centers were mapped for efficient control. Finally, another transmission arrived from the planet's surface. This time it came from a different location. The translation systems identified the source as a place called Geneva. Admiral Kethvar, this is Director Sarah Martinez of the United Nations Security Council. We appreciate your clarification regarding the nature of your visit. However, we maintain our position that diplomatic dialogue remains the best path forward. We invite you to send a representative to Earth for face-to-face discussions. We believe many misunderstandings can be resolved through direct communication. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in frustration. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. They seemed incapable of understanding their helpless position. Sir, suggested Vexthul, perhaps a demonstration would clarify matters. We could destroy one of their space stations. Show them what our weapons can do. Yes, select the largest human space station. Prepare for surgical strike. Make it clean and visible from their planet surface. Target selected, sir. The station they call Alpha 7. It orbits directly above their largest population center. Perfect. The destruction would be seen by billions of humans. After watching their proudest space achievement vaporized in seconds, they would understand the futility of resistance. All ships prepare for advance to inner system. We will move slowly, giving the humans time to track our approach. When we reach optimal firing position, destroy the target station with a single shot. Make it spectacular. The massive fleet began moving deeper into the Sol system, 10,000 ships advancing like a tidal wave of destruction. Their engines lit up space with brilliant fire. Their weapons charged with enough energy to crack moons. Admiral Kethvar felt confident this demonstration would end human resistance immediately. After seeing Imperial power firsthand, they would beg for mercy. It was always the same pattern: fear, surrender, compliance. He had no idea that every move his fleet made was being tracked by sensors beyond his imagination. He could not know that human technology had been watching galactic civilizations for centuries. He would never realize that Earth's apparent primitiveness was the most sophisticated deception in cosmic history. The Imperial fleet advanced toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Behind them, space itself began to change as ancient human systems awakened from their patient slumber. The moment of truth, the Imperial fleet moved through the Sol system like a slow avalanche of death. 10,000 warships advanced in perfect formation, their massive hulls gleaming under the light of the human sun. Admiral Kethvar watched the tactical displays with growing satisfaction as his armada approached the inner planets. "Distance to target planet?" he asked. 2 million kilometers and closing, sir. We should reach optimal firing position in 30 minutes. Perfect timing. The humans would have hours to watch the fleet approach. Their primitive telescopes and basic radar would show them exactly what was coming. Fear would build with every passing moment. By the time the Imperial fleet reached Earth orbit, the humans would be desperate to surrender. Any response from the planet surface? Continued diplomatic requests, sir. They keep asking for meetings and negotiations. No signs of military preparation. Kethvar's three eyes focused on the planet ahead. Earth looked peaceful from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown continents. Billions of humans lived on that world, going about their daily lives. Soon they would all be subjects of the Empire. Sir, we're detecting increased communication traffic from the planet. They appear to be broadcasting emergency messages to their population. Excellent. Panic will make them more cooperative. The communications officer looked puzzled. Actually, sir, the messages don't seem panicked. They're telling people to continue normal activities. Some kind of public announcement that the situation is being handled through proper channels. Strange. Most species began mass evacuations when faced with Imperial fleets. They moved populations away from major cities, hid their children, prepared for the worst. These humans seemed almost calm. Perhaps they don't understand the size of our fleet, suggested Commander Vexthal. Their sensors might be too primitive to count our ships accurately. No matter. They will understand soon enough. The fleet continued its advance. At this distance, even human eyes could see the approaching warships as bright points of light moving against the starfield. 10,000 suns announcing the end of human independence. Sir, we're now within optimal firing range of the target space station. Kethvar looked at the tactical display. The human space station, designated Alpha 7, hung in orbit above their largest city. It was a simple construction, clearly built for scientific research rather than military defense. Destroying it would demonstrate Imperial power without significant loss of useful infrastructure. All ships halt advance. Prepare for demonstration strike. I want every human on that planet to see what happens next. The massive fleet slowed to a stop. 10,000 ships positioned themselves in Earth orbit like metal gods looking down on mortals. Their weapons charged with energies that could split atoms and melt mountains. Target locked. Main battery charged and ready. Fire. A single beam of coherent energy lanced out from the flagship's primary weapon. It was beautiful in its precision. A line of pure destruction connecting the Imperial dreadnought to the human space station. The beam lasted only seconds, but the space station didn't explode. It didn't vaporize. It didn't even seem to notice. "Sir," called the weapons officer, voice confused. "Direct hit confirmed, but the target is undamaged." "What?" Kethvar spun toward the tactical display. The human space station floated exactly where it had been, completely intact. "Check your targeting systems." "All systems functioning normally, sir. We hit the target precisely, but our sensors show no damage whatsoever." "Impossible. Imperial weapons could punch through any known shielding. That beam carried enough energy to destroy a city block. No primitive space station could survive a direct hit. Fire again." Full power this time. The flagship's main battery discharged again. This time, other ships in the fleet added their fire. Dozens of energy beams converged on the human space station. The combined firepower could have melted an asteroid. The station remained perfectly intact. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice was strained. "I'm detecting some kind of interference. Our sensors are having difficulty maintaining locks on targets." Before Kethvar could respond, something impossible happened. The planet below began to change. Large sections of the continents were moving. Not earthquakes or volcanic activity. The land masses themselves were sliding apart like enormous doors opening. Beneath them lay structures that made Imperial dreadnoughts look like toys. "What in the name of the void is that?" whispered Vexthal. The sensor displays filled with contacts. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Weapons installations the size of cities rose from hidden positions across the planet's surface. Gun emplacements that dwarfed entire Imperial fleets emerged from concealment beneath oceans. The polar ice caps split open to reveal massive defense platforms bristling with technology beyond Zephyrian understanding. But that was not the most shocking revelation. Earth's moon was splitting apart. The ancient celestial body cracked down the middle like an egg hatching, but inside was not rock and metal. Inside was a mechanical core, an artificial construct disguised as a natural satellite for millions of years. Weapon systems beyond comprehension unfolded like deadly flowers blooming in space. "Sir, emergency readings across all sensors. Those installations are powering up." "Impossible," Kethvar breathed. "This is impossible. Our intelligence reports showed a primitive civilization. Where did this technology come from?" The answer came in the form of another transmission from the planet's surface. This time the human speaker was a different person. An elderly woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. "Admiral Kethvar, this is Director Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Council. We tried to handle this diplomatically, but you have insisted on violence. We regret this outcome." The woman's image was replaced by a technical display showing the Imperial fleet, but the display showed things that Zephyrian sensors had never detected. Energy signatures, weapon specifications, exact crew counts on every ship. The humans knew everything about the Imperial Armada down to the smallest detail. "You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare for immediate withdrawal from this system. Failure to comply will result in defensive action." Kethvar found his voice. "You cannot threaten the Imperial fleet. We have 10,000 ships. You are primitives playing with forces beyond your understanding. Admiral," the woman's voice was sad but firm, "you understand nothing about us. You have 15 seconds. The tactical displays exploded with warning signals. Every human installation was targeting Imperial ships. But the targeting systems showed energy readings that broke Zephyrian measurement scales. The weapons pointing at his fleet operated on principles that Imperial science could not even identify. "Sir, emergency power to engines. We need to retreat immediately." "Belay that order," Kethvar snarled. "No primitive species can threaten the Empire. All ships open fire. Destroy everything." 10,000 Imperial warships opened fire simultaneously. The combined firepower could have sterilized a planet. Energy beams, plasma bolts, quantum torpedoes, and particle cannons filled space with devastating light. None of it reached the targets. Some kind of barrier surrounded Earth and its installations. Imperial weapons struck the barrier and simply stopped existing. Not reflected or absorbed. The energy just vanished as if it had never been fired at all. "Time's up," said the human woman. The planet's surface lit up like a star. Every weapon installation fired at once. But these were not energy beams or projectile weapons. They were something else entirely. Something that reached out and touched the fabric of reality itself. Admiral Kethvar had exactly 3.7 seconds to understand what was happening to his fleet. The Imperial ships were not being destroyed. They were being unmade. The weapons didn't blast through armor or overwhelm shields. They simply convinced matter to stop existing. The great dreadnought Eternal Dominion began to fade like morning mist. Kethvar watched his own hands become transparent as the human weapons worked their impossible technology. Around him, his bridge crew was dissolving into nothing. His last thought, transmitted across quantum channels to the Imperial core worlds, was a single word: impossible. But the humans were not finished. Their weapons reached out beyond the dying fleet, following hyperspace signatures and quantum entanglement trails across the galaxy itself. Every ship that had ever been part of this invasion force. Every Imperial base that had supported the operation. Every world that had contributed to the Armada. The cleansing was total and instantaneous across hundreds of light years. The cleansing in the span of 3.7 seconds. The greatest military force in galactic history simply ceased to exist. The Imperial fleet did not explode in brilliant fireballs. The massive dreadnoughts did not break apart under overwhelming firepower. The 10,000 warships that had, moments before dominated Earth's orbital space, simply faded away like shadows at dawn. Admiral Kethvar's final transmission reached the Zephyrian, core worlds as a quantum echo bouncing across hyperspace. His last word, impossible, arrived at Imperial command just as his atoms were being gently convinced to forget how to hold together. Supreme Admiral Jektar was reviewing casualty reports from the Outer Rim, rebellions when the message arrived. His cybernetic eye flashed as he processed the brief transmission. Then the quantum communication array detected something else. The familiar signatures of Kethvar's entire fleet were vanishing from the galactic navigation network. Communications, Jektar barked. Establish contact with Admiral Kethvar immediately. The communications officer worked frantically at his console. Sir, I can't find any Imperial ships in the Sol system. All fleet transponders show offline. Impossible. Run a full sensor sweep. Check for interference or equipment malfunction. Minutes passed as the most sophisticated detection equipment in the Empire searched for signs of the missing Armada. The results made no sense. 10,000 ships and their crews had simply vanished from existence. Sir, the sensor operator's voice shook. I'm detecting quantum disturbances spreading outward from the Sol system. Something is following our hyperspace navigation networks. Before Jektar could respond, alarms began sounding throughout Imperial command. Not attack warnings, something worse. System failure alerts from military bases across the Empire. Sir, we're losing contact with Outpost Vega 7. Zephyrian 3rd Fleet reports complete loss of communication. The shipyards at Alpha Centauri have gone dark. Military Academy at Rigel is not responding. Jektar watched in growing horror as red lights spread across the tactical display of the Empire. Every installation that had contributed ships or personnel to Kethvar's invasion force was going offline. Not attacked, not destroyed, simply ceasing to exist. The pattern was methodical and terrifying. Whatever had eliminated the invasion fleet was now systematically erasing every trace of Imperial involvement in the operation. Shipyards that had built the vessels, training facilities that had prepared the crews, supply depots that had armed the fleet, research stations that had developed the invasion plans. All of it was vanishing as if it had never existed. Sir, the phenomenon is accelerating. We're losing military installations faster than we can track them. How is this possible? What kind of weapon can reach across interstellar space? The answer came in the form of another transmission from the Sol system. The same elderly human woman appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Earth continued its normal rotation as if nothing had happened. Supreme Admiral Jektar, I am Director Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Council. Your invasion force has been neutralized. All Imperial assets involved in planning or supporting this operation have been removed as a security precaution. Jektar found his voice. What have you done? You cannot destroy Imperial property. The Empire will not tolerate this aggression. The human woman's expression remained calm. Admiral, there is no longer an empire. Your military infrastructure is gone. Your fleets are gone. Your command structure is gone. What remains are civilian populations on various worlds who are now free to govern themselves. The tactical display confirmed her words. Red zones marked former Imperial territory now showed no military presence whatsoever. Hundreds of star systems that had been under Zephyrian control for centuries were suddenly independent. This is impossible. The Empire has stood for 10,000 years. You cannot destroy a galactic civilization in minutes. We have not destroyed your civilization, Admiral. We have removed your ability to threaten others. The Zephyrian people are free to continue their lives peacefully. They simply no longer have the means to conquer and oppress other species. Jektar's mind reeled. How could a primitive species accomplish what the combined rebellions of 100 worlds had failed to achieve? The Empire had seemed invincible. Its military power had been absolute. What are you? He whispered. Director Vasquez tilted her head slightly. We are humans, Admiral. We are also the reason this galaxy has remained relatively peaceful for the last 50,000 years. The Empire was becoming too aggressive, too dangerous. We decided intervention was necessary. 50,000 years. That's impossible. Our records show humans achieve spaceflight only recently. Your records show what we wanted them to show. We have been watching galactic civilizations for a very long time, Admiral. Most species develop peacefully and never require our attention. Unfortunately, the Zephyrian Empire chose a different path. The implications hit HFY like a physical blow. Earth was not a primitive world. It was something else entirely. Something that had been observing and influencing galactic development for millennia. We tried to discourage your expansion through subtle means. The human continued. Strategic resource shortages, navigation hazards in key systems, rebellions among conquered species, but you adapted to each obstacle. Your invasion of Earth forced us to take direct action. You caused the rebellions, the supply problems, the accidents that destroyed our exploration fleets. We prefer indirect methods when possible. They cause less disruption to galactic stability. Direct intervention, like what just occurred, is reserved for extreme circumstances. HFY looked at the tactical display showing the remains of his empire. Scattered worlds with no central authority. No military to enforce Imperial law. No infrastructure to support conquest. What happens now? Now the Zephyrian people learn to live peacefully. We will monitor the situation to ensure no new military buildup occurs. Other species in this region will be free to develop without Imperial interference. And if we refuse? If we try to rebuild? Director Vasquez's expression remained kind but firm. Admiral, you have just seen what happens when humans are forced to defend themselves. Do not mistake our preference for peace as weakness. We will do whatever is necessary to maintain galactic stability. The transmission ended. HFY stood alone on his command bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of a 10,000-year-old empire. His military was gone. His fleets were gone. His authority was gone. In the space of minutes, humanity had accomplished what no enemy had ever managed. They had not conquered the Zephyrian Empire. They had simply made it irrelevant. Across the galaxy, former Imperial worlds celebrated their sudden freedom. Species that had lived under Zephyrian oppression for centuries found themselves independent overnight. The largest military force in known space had been reduced to nothing, without a single shot being fired in anger. And on Earth, children played in parks while their parents went to work, unaware that their world had just rewritten the balance of power in the galaxy. The planet continued its peaceful rotation, its cities gleaming in the sunlight, its people living ordinary lives, but deep beneath mountains and ocean floors, human scientists made small adjustments to weapon systems and returned to their monitoring stations. After all, the galaxy contained 847 other spacefaring civilizations, and some of them were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about what had happened to the Zephyrian Empire. The new reality, 6 months after the Zephyrian Empire ceased to exist, the galaxy had settled into a new pattern of peace and confusion. The Altarian Republic held an emergency session of their parliament to discuss the sudden silence from their former Imperial overlords. Ambassador Kretal stood before the assembly, her blue skin pale with worry as she delivered her report. Fellow representatives, our deep space monitoring stations confirm what we feared. The entire Zephyrian military infrastructure has vanished. No ships, no bases, no communication from their core worlds. Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. The Altarians had been conquered by the Empire 300 years ago. They had learned to live under Zephyrian rule, paying tribute and providing soldiers for Imperial fleets. The idea that their oppressors could simply disappear was impossible to accept. What about the invasion fleet that was sent to Sol 3? Asked Representative Velnax. 10,000 ships cannot simply vanish. According to our long-range sensors, the fleet reached the human homeworld and then stopped transmitting. No wreckage, no survivors, no explanation. Perhaps the humans have some kind of weapon technology, something that could destroy an Imperial fleet. Kretal shook her head. Our intelligence on the humans suggested they were primitive. Basic chemical rockets, simple space stations. Their largest warship was smaller than our civilian cargo vessels. Then how do we explain the destruction of an empire that had conquered half the galaxy? No one had an answer. The Altarians, like dozens of other former Imperial subjects, found themselves free but bewildered. Their oppressors had not been defeated in battle. They had not surrendered. They had simply stopped existing. On the former Imperial core world of Zephyria Prime, the surviving civilian population struggled to understand their new reality. Former Imperial engineer Hexmore worked in the ruins of what had been the greatest shipyard in the galaxy. Every military vessel had vanished overnight. Every weapon blueprint had been erased from computer systems. Even the orbital defense platforms had disappeared. It makes no sense, he told his colleague Pexelar as they surveyed the empty construction base. How do you make a dreadnought stop existing? Matter cannot simply be destroyed. Maybe it was not destroyed, Pexelar suggested. Maybe it was moved somewhere else. Where? There is no technology in the galaxy capable of moving objects that large across interstellar distances. They worked in silence, trying to salvage civilian equipment from the abandoned facility. Around them, the Zephyrian people were learning to live without their military might. For 10,000 years they had ruled through strength. Now they had to discover what it meant to be ordinary. The psychological impact was devastating. Entire generations of Zephyrians had grown up believing their species was superior to all others. They had seen themselves as natural rulers destined to bring order to the galaxy. The sudden removal of their military capability left them questioning everything they had believed about themselves. Meanwhile, in a secure facility beneath the mountains of Switzerland, Director Elena Vasquez reviewed reports from monitoring stations across the galaxy. The aftermath of the Zephyrian intervention was proceeding as expected. Former Imperial territories were establishing new governments. Trade routes were being reorganized. The threat of galactic war had been eliminated. Status report she requested from her aide, Dr. James Chen. 846 active civilizations remain under observation. Threat assessment shows green across all monitored species. No signs of military buildup or aggressive expansion plans. Any investigation into the Zephyrian disappearance? Several species have sent exploration vessels to former Imperial space. They find empty installations and confused civilian populations. No one has detected our involvement. Vasquez nodded. Keeping Earth's true nature secret was essential to maintaining galactic stability. If other species knew that humans possessed technology capable of erasing entire civilizations, it would cause panic and potentially trigger an arms race. What about the Zephyrian survivors? Adapting slowly. Their civilian government is attempting to establish diplomatic relations with former subject species. Some worlds are receptive. Others are still angry about centuries of oppression. That's normal. It will take time for wounds to heal. Dr. Chen hesitated before continuing. Director, some of our analysts are concerned about the precedent we've set. Using the erasure protocol on such a massive scale. It's never been done before. Vasquez turned to look out the window at the peaceful Swiss countryside. Children were playing in a nearby village, their laughter carrying on the wind. They had no idea that their world contained weapons that could unmake the fundamental forces of reality. The Zephyrian Empire was becoming too dangerous, she said quietly. Their expansion rate was accelerating. Their military technology was improving. If we had waited another century, they might have developed weapons capable of threatening other major civilizations. But complete erasure of their military capability was necessary. We tried subtle intervention for 300 years, encouraging rebellions, causing supply shortages, creating navigation hazards. Nothing worked. The Empire adapted to every obstacle we placed in their path. She moved to her desk and activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Green dots marked peaceful civilizations. Yellow dots showed species with minor aggressive tendencies. Red dots indicated potential threats. For the first time in 50 years, there were no red dots on the map. This is what we exist to protect, Dr. Chen. Galactic peace. The right of species to develop without fear of conquest or oppression. Sometimes protecting that peace requires difficult decisions. I understand, Director. It's just the scale of what we did. An entire civilization's military might erased in seconds. The Zephyrians still exist. Their people are still alive. Their culture continues. They simply no longer have the ability to threaten others. In time, they may even thank us for freeing them from the burden of maintaining an empire. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the monitoring station. Dr. Chen checked his tablet and frowned. What is it? Vasquez asked. We're detecting unusual energy readings from the Vegan Confederacy. It might be nothing, but their power consumption has increased by 30% over the last month. Vasquez studied the data. The Vegans were generally peaceful, but they had been part of the Zephyrian Empire's military alliance. Perhaps they were attempting to fill the power vacuum left by Imperial collapse. Increase monitoring of Vegan space. Deploy additional sensor platforms if necessary. If they're building weapons, I want to know about it. Yes, Director. As Dr. Chen left to implement the orders, Vasquez returned to her window. The Swiss mountains stretched into the distance, their peaks covered with snow that had been falling for millennia. Earth looked so peaceful from this perspective, so ordinary. But beneath those mountains lay technology that humanity had been developing for 50,000 years. Weapons that could reach across space and time to unmake matter at the quantum level. Sensors that could detect a single ship's engine signature from thousands of light years away. Defense systems that made planetary invasions impossible. Earth was not just a world. It was a fortress, a monitoring station, a guarantor of galactic peace. The surface population lived their normal lives unaware of their planet's true purpose. They went to work, raised families, wrote poetry, and played games. They argued about politics and fell in love and worried about their taxes. They were beautifully, perfectly human, and they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Vasquez's communication device chimed with an incoming message. The caller ID showed it was from the Public Relations Department. Yes? Director, we're getting questions from the international media about unusual aurora activity last week. How should we respond? Standard protocol. Solar storm activity. Perfectly normal. No cause for concern. Understood. The aurora activity had actually been caused by the charging cycles of the lunar defense platforms. But the public didn't need to know that Earth's moon was an artificial construct disguised as a natural satellite. They didn't need to know that their planet's magnetic field was artificially enhanced to hide massive energy signatures. They didn't need to know that their quiet, peaceful world was the reason the galaxy remained stable. Vasquez closed the communication and returned to her reports. There were 846 civilizations to monitor, potential threats to assess. The endless work of maintaining peace through overwhelming, invisible strength. Tomorrow, children would play in parks while their parents went to work. Scientists would publish papers on interesting discoveries. Artists would create beautiful things. Politicians would debate important issues, and deep beneath the surface, humanity would continue its patient vigil over the stars.